Hello, my friend a couple weeks ago, or like a month ago, came out with this video about how he became a Muslim. And he used to be a Christian. I know him pretty well, and I am a Christian myself. I'm trying not to be a cultural Christian. I'm trying to be a disciple of Jesus, and I decided to make this video as a way to show my perspective on things like religion and how I should use my talents for the Lord and how I can be a light to others in this world. Now, what does it mean to be a Christian? To be a Christian, it means that you're going to put your hope completely in Jesus as your Savior. Now, in this video, I'm going to tell you 3 ways, the most important ways, that I came to know Jesus and how I am able to be affirmed in my faith. Just like my friend did his Muslim video about how he became a Muslim, I have decided that this will be my evidence for Jesus right now. In this wooded, snowy place, we can know that Christianity is true through the Bible, the world and the creation, and how reality is set up, and from my personal testimony. Everyone has their own personal testimony, but we'll get to that at the end. As someone who is a Christian growing up in a Christian home, I have been able to see the Bible and see how it has evidence to how Jesus came and lived and died for me. Now, you may not fully trust that, and I hope that I can explain that better for you in this video. So if you got to think about this Bible. It's 66 books, okay? If you think about it, it's creation. That's where we have Adam and Eve, and we end about 70 AD kind of thing when Jerusalem falls. So we got all those years. Each of those 66 books, they're just sprinkled in there and written by people. Lots by the apostles, and they're talking about Jesus in the New Testament, and lots of prophecy in the Old Testament. Now, if you look at all this prophecy in the Old Testament, they point to Jesus. They say that his bones will not be broken. And when he was on the cross and died, his bones would have been broken if he had not already died. Because when they crucify people, they break the legs of the person so then they die quicker. Because they were going to do that because they didn't want to have to deal with this dead body the following day, because it was like the Sabbath and we won't work. And those were the Roman soldiers doing that. I'm not sure why they don't celebrate the Sabbath. Maybe they just want to have a day off. Now, also in Isaiah, there's many Jews out there that wouldn't accept Isaiah, the book of Isaiah, written by the prophet Isaiah. They wouldn't accept it as a book of the Bible. There's so many things in there that just point right to Jesus, and how that the Jews will reject him, and how he will be a different kind of person than they expected. Now, if you think about the Bereans, those Bereans were in the New Testament. Now, Paul went and was an apostle, and Jesus came to him personally, not in a dream. My Muslim friend told me that was a dream, and I was like, no. Jesus came to him, and there were miracles and stuff to show that this was actually Jesus. Now, you can go and read that yourself. Now, so Paul goes and talks to these people called the Bereans. Now, they're fluent in studying the scriptures and stuff. They want to be able to understand if this is true or not, if Jesus is the Christ, the Messiah, the one who they originally thought would free them from the Romans, but instead Paul is saying that they can have eternal salvation. Now, they go and study the scriptures. They scour the scriptures, and then they find it to be true. Now, in this video, I'm trying to help you be like a Berean. Now, if you're not a Christian, you can still be like a Berean. You gotta consult all the facts. You can't just take little nitpick things and just be like, okay, that makes everything else not true. There are some things that you can't understand, such as the Trinity. Now, the Trinity in the Bible, the word Trinity is created by the church, but it's not actually in the Bible. Now, people have used that against Christianity, but I would say that, think about your favorite book. Let's say your favorite book is Treasure Island, because we love Treasure Island. Now, so Robert Louis Stevenson wrote Treasure Island, and he has all these characters, whatever their names are. I don't remember their names, but you have, Huck Finn and stuff like that. You have all the pirates and stuff, and all these different characters and emotions and happenings, and yet the story itself never really mentions Robert Louis Stevenson's name. But if you think about it, every little bit of that story, every word, every interaction was written and blended together by Robert Louis Stevenson, and we can see that by just reading it and understanding it as a whole, instead of taking little different parts and just being like, Robert Louis Stevenson didn't write this or something like that. There is evidence in the fact that that is actually his voice and tone and things like that. And also about the Trinity, Jesus prayed to God, and that's okay. It may sound weird because Jesus is God, and yet he's like doing the prayer that's like, you pray like this, and it's like he does, and when he does like the Lord's Prayer, you're like, hallowed be your name. And how could Jesus, who is God, do that to God? Well, that's because he's the Son. Jesus has a relationship with him. The Trinity is like a dance. I believe Tim Keller once said this. Now, they have a relationship together. Now, I personally think that the Trinity is such a wonderful thing that is hard to understand, but God helps us understand this through the unity of marriage and family. So we can see relationships in a way that Jesus and God and the Holy Spirit have together themselves. Now, just because the word Trinity is not in the Bible does not mean it isn't a thing inside the Bible. Now, there's other things about the Bible that's like, oh, the Bible has like the little lines and stuff over the little things, like all this interconnection. Now, I was like, that's so cool, I'm gonna look that up. And I find it on Reddit, and then on Reddit, they're like, that's so stupid. It's like the author can literally reference itself in its own writing. But like, you gotta think, these are 66 books written by like 20-something authors. Now that's pretty cool because it has lots of years between each other. And also, it's prophecy, like what I said about the bones. That was hundreds of years before. Also, they might not have had access to the other authors' writings, even though they were Jews. Some of them did know, and yes, that is cool. Now, we're gonna also find the fact that comparing the truth of the Bible and all the things about it, with the prophecy interconnections, whether you'll take them as it being divinely inspired by God, or it's just like the author is just reading over whatever the other person already did. But the prophecy, you got to remember that. Now, you can think about the Muslim book, the Quran, and its reliability. Now, it is said that Muhammad is a messenger from God, from Allah. Now, so he has come to give us truth, correct? As for the Muslims. Now, Muhammad himself said that Jesus was a good teacher. Good teacher. Okay. He was not the Son of God, though. So think about that. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except for me. Now, Jesus did teach many principles that should and have done so much good in the world. But when it comes down to it, Jesus' central message was to say that he was the only way into heaven. Now, to say that Jesus is a good teacher and to not say that he is not the Son of God, I cannot live with that inside my head. Now, I'm not meaning to offend any Muslims, but I just can't wrap my head around that. How can he be a good teacher if what he said was false? I would not consider that as reliable. One man, Muhammad. And then we have Jesus, who is pointed to by so many prophets and so many other Jews. So many things. The second thing is creation. Now, one of the things that's hardest for me to grasp is I'm not the only one in the world. I have this perspective that I have very uniquely. I could not possibly understand anyone's point of view, even if I was studying this one person every day. I just could not do that. I could not see what they're going to do and predict what they're going to do. It's impossible. When I go talk to my friends, and then they just like, oh, I experienced this. And then I'm like, you experienced that? I experienced that. I had no idea they would experience that. There's like so many facets of a person that I'm just like, whoa, this is impossible. And how many people are in the world? 7 billion. That's just crazy. And everything's just so crazy. Like, all these things to think about, and how the world is all like this. I see the Trinity. I see how these relationships are pointing to a relationship that isn't flawed like the earthly ones we have. It's pointing to a relationship with Jesus. Now, I also think about just the beauty of creation itself. There has to be something else out there, not aliens, guys. Now, also, there's other things. I'll put this article in the description, which is just a little nitpicky thing, I don't know, but like, apparently in your DNA there is a set of numbers. That set of numbers, if you take the Hebrew alphabet and you assign a number 1 through, like, let's say the Hebrew alphabet has like 30 letters, because I'm not really a scholar. The first one, and we got the last one, and we have those all numbered. Now, if we take those numbers and we've already assigned them to a letter, and we take that number from our DNA and we just we take the assigned letters, guess what that spells? That spells God's name, Yahweh. Now, if you take everyone's personal life and you see how God has worked in it, like, it's just so amazing. For my life, I have thanked God for one thing every day since June 6th, 2022. And I might have miscounted, but I'm like close to 950 thank you things. Now I can just flip through that book and just see how God has worked in my life, answered prayers, allowed me to have friendships when I feel broken, allowed me to get things that I really wanted for Christmas. Now, I'm not saying that everyone has a testimony that they can just immediately see right now, because you need to allow God to work in your life. You got to invite him in, because if you are not allowing him to work in your life, you're not going to see it. You're not going to actually believe that he is in your life. You need to understand that God is a person that isn't just going to show up on your door and say, believe in me. You got to see him in the subtle ways as well. He also reaches you at certain times, but mainly for the conviction of the heart. Today, people don't always evangelize. I do not want to be a cultural Christian and only talk about my faith sometimes. I have put out this video because I felt compelled because of my Muslim friend doing the same. Now, I hope that my perspective has changed your way of thinking slightly, or affirmed it, or not offended you at least. Now, I'm going to get off this snowy log, and thank you for spending some time with me.